I'm Jasmine Moradi, and you're listening to the Power of Audio, Science, and AI. My guest today is my dear friend Helena Kosinski. We met for the first time in March 2018 when I contacted her at Nielsen Music to commission Soundtrack Your Brand study, The Hidden Value in Music for Business. In January 2020, Nielsen Music was acquired by MRC, and today Helena is VP at MRC Data, focusing on business development and data sharing of the global music business. For more than 2 decades, Nielsen Music, MRC Data's consumer research, sales, streaming, and airplay data have been trusted source for the Billboard charts. Helena has been a part of the journey for over 11 years, and before that, she was working at PRS Music in London. Helena has studied music at Cardiff University, and she's an active speaker at MIDEM, Nylon Connect, Music Matters, and Women in Music. Today, Helen and I are going to discuss the ins and outs of MRC Data's 2020 US year-end report, which provides an overview of the music industry's leading trends, data, and insights from the past 12 months. The report is a collaboration with Billboard and outlines the powerful role music continues to play in consumers' life. With that, Helena, I welcome you and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jasmine. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you and doing this together with you. How are you doing? And how is my old hometown London in times like this?
I am fine. London is, as the rest of the world, a very surreal place to be. I don't think I've been to central London for months, which is quite sad. Obviously, I love the city. We have had a challenging year, like many other countries around the world. And London is on full lockdown, so no pubs, no restaurants, no bars, no doing anything. And of course, in the wintertime, it's grey and raining. So conforming to its stereotype.
But at least you've been very busy at work. So let us dig into your data, and I'm super excited.
Thank you.
In June last year, I saw your presentation at MIDEM, the impact of COVID-19 on music, with the focus on consumer search for the new. And with the hit of the pandemic, I believe it's very important for brands to understand how their consumers' music consumption and audio streaming behavior has shifted, so they can adopt the change into their audio branding strategies. So walk us through the key findings from your presentation.
So yes, you're right. I spoke at MIDEM virtually, obviously, as all conferences are now. And MIDEM is at the beginning of June. So we were about, two and a bit months into the pandemic. And one of the first things that we did at MRC when the pandemic started at the end of March was immediately start doing some research, because that's what we do. So we put a survey into fields in the US, and we called it the impact of COVID-19. So we wanted to understand, how are consumers reacting to this complete shift in their life, basically. And we then switched from it just being one survey into a tracker. So we started asking these questions, and then we did so on a very frequent basis. So we asked every 2 weeks for the first couple of months, and then a little less frequently. And this year, we will be doing another 4 waves of that tracker once a quarter. So we can really start to trend how consumers' behaviors have changed. So back at the beginning of June, I was indeed talking about the search for the new. And that's really because as the world locked down and as everyone was confined to their homes and everything stopped, normal life stopped, we saw immediate change in people's behaviors, obviously. There was, in the first couple of weeks, there was a real focus on watching the news and watching a lot of television, sitting in front of that screen almost, 24/7, trying to figure out what's going on, what's going to happen, what does this mean? And then as time progressed and people got bored of being in front of the screen, they were constantly searching for something new to do. And actually, what we saw was as we did these waves, where people were switching up their behaviors. So initially it was watching television, then it was almost trying to stay away from digital and discover things like baking and cooking like big meals and making sourdough. I don't know how many of these you did, Jasmine, but
not really.
Did you make your own sourdough?
No.
Neither did I, actually, but a lot of people really went into their kitchens, but also like crafting, DIY. A lot of people in those pleasant weather spring months did a lot of work around the house, all those jobs that people have been putting off. But people were constantly switching and changing and looking for that new thing. And one of the other things that we saw a lot of, and have continued to see a significant amount of, is the adoption of streaming services. So people signing up for free trials and then continuing to use different types of streaming services. So on the film and TV side, that's seen the biggest increase. Netflix, Disney Plus launched in the spring of 2020, which is probably the most perfect time, as everyone was suddenly stuck at home, and here are all the Disney movies that you and your children might want to watch. So they've had a fantastic year. We also saw a nice increase in music subscriptions, and obviously that's where I focus my time, on the music industry. So seeing people exploring that new thing, discovering a new service, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and then also going on to discover new music via their new streaming subscription.
So you would say, like, overall what they're searching for, it's not just like the new thing, but it's also like they need to be entertained. So the entire entertainment industry has suddenly become even more important, because before we sought out to be entertained. Yes. And now when you're stuck, you have this hyper need of doing things and being entertained. And how do you do it? And then thank God we have digital
yeah, absolutely
today.
Yes, it was all about the digital entertainment. So yes, it became even more important. And yeah, it was a search for new, search for entertainment, and search for shifting things up all the time. So it wasn't necessarily new things completely, but it was just new to you. Yeah. So a lot of that older generation that weren't so digitally savvy, engaged, were suddenly like, okay, now I've got some downtime. Maybe now's the time where I will discover this new thing called streaming. So
well, true. And with things happening and all the concerts that got cancelled, you do mention that an interest in visual concerts have developed and grown also as a result of the lockdown. So I'm curious to understand, how interested are people really in visual concert? Is this something that will continue? And what is it about them that they enjoy? And most importantly, is the audience willing to pay for it? Because of everything else on the internet has become for free, right? And then are they expecting it to be free now? And then will the quality be as good?
Lots of questions there, but you're absolutely right. Virtual concerts or live streams are a thing that, 12 months ago, they existed, but no one ever talked about them, because live music and going to live in person was the thing that people did. So yes, we've been tracking virtual concerts and the consumer reaction to these over the last 11 months. And there's a lot to unpick. So firstly, are they popular? Yes, they are. Are they mainstream? No, I wouldn't say that they were a mainstream activity. So, one of the questions that we ask is, have you attended a live stream concert in the past 2 weeks? And about 25% of the US population have. So, it's not a mainstream activity. It's not over half of the population. It's about a quarter of the US population that are engaging with live streaming on some level. And live stream, maybe back in March the perception was, it's someone, an artist at home in their bedroom, just going out on Instagram Live or Facebook Live or something and just engaging with their fans in that way. But now, really, there's still that happening, but there's been this massive evolution of live streams. So we have the likes of Dua Lipa with a kind of insanely beautifully produced concert live stream. There's Niall Horan, who did a concert that was live streamed from the Royal Albert Hall. There's Nick Drake, who sat alone in Alexandra Palace in London and sold tickets for his live stream event. There's beautifully produced and expensive events happening. So I think people are engaging, they are popular, people are paying to watch. Certainly there are more paid live streams than there were at the beginning of the pandemic. What people are willing to pay is an interesting one. We have asked some questions about that. I don't have a dollar value to give you, but about 36% this is data coming from our last wave in January of this year, about 36% of the US population are willing to pay for a virtual concert. So it's, there is that willingness to pay. I think people will be asked, how do people want to pay for a ticket? Want to pay for a virtual live stream, and it is by buying a ticket. So that mechanism that they're used to of like, I buy a ticket, I go to a live stream, in the same way that they would go to a live concert also exists, rather than people paying for like giving tips or paying to listen to a particular song. It is that more traditional method that is more popular. But really, the public does enjoy them. They enjoy, if they're fans of a particular artist, they like that artist connection. We also found that people really like, when an artist does a live stream from their home, and they can kind of get that insight into that artist's life. Like, this is what their living room looks like. And, oh, look, there's their dog or something. So that personal connection has really resonated with fans too.
Yeah. And how is the technology developing? What platforms are you seeing out there that are taking over this area?
Yes. Well, that's been fascinating. There are a lot. So we've seen we've seen kind of like social media platforms or platforms that pre-existed, very big players like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. They all have a live feature that artists have been very much using. We've seen companies pivot. So there are companies that were in the ticketing space, perhaps, that have pivoted also to hosting live streams or streaming platforms like Mixcloud. They have like a live Mixcloud Live where people can go live on their platform, or Dice, which is a ticketing platform. They also kind of sell tickets for live streams and kind of are in that space. And then we've seen a lot of startups. So new companies springing up, all trying to kind of differentiate themselves in different ways. And that's quite challenging. So, are they hosting live streams? Are they producing live streams? Are they, there's a streaming service where you also buy a physical speaker, and I mean, this is very niche, but you buy a physical speaker and there is a recording studio that artists will go and play in, and that speaker is perfectly tuned so that what you listen to at home reflects the exact live experience in that studio. You know, there's lots of innovation here. And I think along with that, there will be lots of jockeying for position and acquisitions. So we saw a couple of weeks ago that there's a platform called Veeps, which has now had an investment from Live Nation. So I think, you know, all of the big live companies are also looking at that space to figure out what they should be doing with live streaming along with live. So,
but it's positive, right? Because the music industry have been standing very, you know, how to say, steady or very traditional. Not much have happened, and now it gives an opportunity for entrepreneurs and for businesses to pivot, to freshen up and create. I think it's going to come out, as it has already, new amazing entertainment opportunities.
Absolutely, I think that yeah. I mean, it's great to have a kind of new, exciting area of the industry that's developed over the last couple of months. Yeah, I think it's really
and
positive.
the most important thing here is also like trying to create something robust. So I mean, artists continue getting paid for their work.
Yes.
And one area that's always been in entertainment and concert is brand sponsorship. And you guys asked a few questions, if people were more willing to pay for the tickets if they knew that a brand has sponsored the virtual concert. What was the results out of that?
I'm not sure that we asked exactly if people were more willing to pay for tickets. We definitely asked, how do consumers feel about brands that when they align themselves with virtual concerts, or, you know, even more so when they align themselves with COVID-related charities or support artists in some way. And yeah, ultimately the response was very positive. So, more so, I would say, at the beginning of the pandemic, when the need was, or not necessarily the need was more urgent, but it was very top of mind. But yes, when brands align themselves with charity, with supporting, you know, certainly smaller artists, then people think more positively of that brand for that reason. Yes.
So this can become an opportunity then for brands to get into this world.
Absolutely. And I was actually talking to a label the other day who, you know, they have big artists, and those artists have been putting on, you know, very big live streams that are well attended, that sell lots and lots of tickets.
Yeah.
And they said, you know, we don't even have a brand that sponsors this event. And, you know, it's a real opportunity for brands, I think, to think about that live streaming space and to align themselves with some of these artists, with some of these players, because they are popular and they are reaching, you know, very specific demographics as well, obviously depending on the artist, but, you know, it's a good way of reaching teenagers, you know, or younger people who are generally harder to reach by more traditional advertising as well.
Okay, so now let's jump into the MRC Data's 2020 US year-end report. What have you discovered?
So every year, twice a year actually, we put out a free report available to download from our website, which summarizes the key trends that we have seen in both the US music industry and the Canadian music industry in the prior year. So we released in the first week of January our 2020 report, and we cover everything from, you know, the consumption trends, so what's happening with streaming, what's happening with sales, and then, you know, a good summary of the key events of 2020, be they award shows or genres that we've seen interesting things happening, like K-pop. We cover, there's, an in memoriam section that looks at the artists, musical artists that we lost in 2020. We pick some of the most interesting insights from the research that we've done, either on COVID or on Black Lives Matters and that movement. So yes, it's 50 odd pages long and it's free. So I urge anyone to go and download it. There's lots of good data in there.
And you've analyzed that consumers have spent more time with music than ever during 2020. What activities did they spend more time on, and how come?
How come? Well, there was this little thing called the pandemic. No, so yeah, I mean that's really been the story of 2020. The fact that our lives have been turned upside down, and people have spent more time with music. And what we saw were people, like I said, to begin with, spending a lot more time with news and television, but then they adopted new forms of entertaining themselves, and we saw a big rise in the use of social media, obviously as a kind of communication method as well, because that's all digital for the moment, and short form video. And when I say short form video, there are a couple of platforms out there, but the biggest one that everyone will know is TikTok. And 2020, we saw a massive rise in the use of TikTok by people.
Could the increase of music also be a little bit, I've been speaking into the podcast with some people that we feel an anxiety, we feel very isolated during this period of time, that music is something we maybe take it for granted, but during this kind of period of time, it helps us relax, it makes us happy, it makes us connect to other people.
100% yes. So yeah, we ask those kind of questions of like why people listen to music, and it is everything that you're saying there. Yes, it is that it's a mood booster, it's a mood alterer, so it can make you happy, but listening to other types of music makes you calm. It's an entertainment method. It's a way of keeping your children entertained. Like, it is an all-round useful and amazing thing. So yes.
And then music is a global language then. And culturally, we do know that people consume music differently. And in your report, you did look at the diverse musical tastes and consumption methods. What did you find across the different cultures?
Yeah, so we did a bunch of surveys in different countries, and we look at, how do people in different markets consume music differently? How do they discover music? Where do they consume music? And what are they listening to? And unsurprisingly, whilst it is a global music industry, it is also localized. And, things like in Japan, the local genres are more popular than Western music. So, people do listen to Western pop and Western rock, but really, it's Japanese pop music. It's classical music is very popular in Japan. Music from soundtracks, music from anime, and every market has its kind of unique structure. In France, for example, French language music is also very popular, partly, I suspect, driven by the French quotas on radio. So, radio in France has to pay a certain amount of French language, French music. In Italy, we saw that, again, whilst Western music is very popular, Westernized Anglo-American music is very popular, there's also, especially amongst teenagers, a real love of Italian language R&B and hip hop. So music from their country, from their streets, there's Neapolitan hip hop is a really big kind of subgenre of hip hop that's very popular there.
And we see similar. Sorry, I had no idea, because I mean, I'm sometimes in France, and I knew that French hip hop was, really huge and popular, but Italian, that was something new.
Absolutely, okay. Italian hip hop, but this is, I mean, actually, hip hop is a kind of very local language. Hip hop is very important across Europe. So again, in Germany, it's a really big thing too. So Germany, France, Italy, all of these countries, music in that local language is hugely important.
Could it also be that hip hop is a way of talking nicely about the challenges that is going on in the different, suburbs and what's going on in the country? So instead of going out and doing negative, you're trying to express yourself through music, which all sometimes comes, the hip hop brings that out.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, I think it is. It's that cultural expression of your particular situation, and then that resonates very much locally. But it doesn't necessarily translate to other countries, partly due to language, but then also partly due to that experience being very, very local. So
it really shows the power of music, what it can do for us. So with the whole increase in everything with music, so let us then jump into the Billboard charts. Who is on the top, and what has influenced these results?
Wow. So there are lots of Billboard charts. So I'll talk about a couple of them. So in the US, obviously Billboard have the top 200 albums chart and the Hot 100 songs chart, singles chart. So they're the kind of primary US charts. On the top of the album chart this week is Morgan Wallen, who is a country music star that, yes, as of yesterday, and we're recording this on the 4th of February, is in significant hot water because of a racial slur that he used. So I suspect his reign at the top will be limited. On top of the songs chart, and also on top of the Billboard Global charts. So last year, Billboard launched 2 new global charts, one global 200 song chart, and then one global excluding the US, so looking at the rest of the world and what was happening there. The same song is on top of all 3 charts, and that is Olivia Rodriguez's Driver's License, which is a massive, massive hit this year, partly driven by TikTok, which is a driver of a lot of new music discovery and a hit maker. But yes, the biggest song of the year so far, undoubtedly.
And do you think because of all these new platforms where musicians are able to express themselves, and as you say, the old model was, okay, let's get a label and let's get me exposed. Now with the whole TikTok era and all the similar platforms, they can use it themselves, and suddenly they can end up on the Billboard. Is that the possibility?
So in terms of what drives the charts, then they're made up, the album charts in the US are made up of physical digital album sales and of streaming. The Hot 100 also includes radio airplay, and the global charts are streaming and digital downloads. I think there's a lot of ways for artists to now promote music and promote themselves. There's that connection with your fan is hugely, hugely important, but at the same time, to get to the top of the charts, you need support from all across the industry, and you need big numbers. So I think it's a combination of lots of different promotional marketing activities.
So if we want to summarize 2020 then, what are the three things that you would say that summarizes pandemic 2020 in this music world?
I think, like I said, it's that search for the new. So, new ways of entertaining yourself, a growth in streaming, an adoption, a change in people's behaviors around streaming. I think the new developments that we saw in live music, in short form video, in the rise of TikTok, and then in terms of from a kind of musical perspective, and we haven't really talked about this, but like the new, not the new, but like the rise in certain genres that we have seen, the types of music that people wanted to listen to, and I think a kind of a nostalgia and a comfort that was required.
Oh, is that what you saw in the genre area?
We did. I mean, genre's been really interesting in terms of the trends that we saw, but we saw obviously there was an impact on release schedule. So there were far fewer new releases over the summer, as big artists who had planned, their album launches just pushed them back. So there was, and very much in the pop space. So there were far fewer new releases. And so we saw a lot of people listening to older music, going and looking for artists that they haven't heard for in a while, or looking and listening to back catalogs from artists. And that kind of nostalgia trip. I'm listening to music from my youth, and it makes me feel calm and comfortable and safe and all of that.
But that's very interesting, right? Something negative happens, we get anxiety. What kind of music do we pull back? It's the new fun, but also, as you say, that music is comfort. And then you want to go back to that old and be remembered. And again, psychology, it brings back that happiness and positive memories in all of this going on. What genders were most people drawn back to? And also in your report, you talk about that there were a couple of people passing away, which also might be that they gone back. What genres were you seeing?
So we saw a really big rise on streaming platforms in country music in the US. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, driven by a number of things, but country music it's not surprising, it's very familiar, it's very American. So I think for a lot of American listeners, it's family friendly. You can put it on in the house when you've got kids at home, and it's not going to offend anyone. And I think also because we saw older people, so people who were trying streaming services for the first time, maybe hadn't used a streaming platform before, were moving from listening to country music on the radio to listening to it on their Amazon Alexa or something, wherever. And so we saw a big rise in country music. We also saw an increase in Latin towards the end of the summer. So I think that's also a mood lifter on the whole. There was also, a number of big Latin artists that released albums and released big songs. But yes, from a genre perspective, big increases in country music and Latin in audio streaming last year.
Amazing. And now let's put 2020 behind us. And how does the forecast looking in 2021? What have you seen? What are the predictions?
What are our predictions? I love this bit. So I think from a genre perspective, we've seen in the last couple of years, a genre like K-pop or music out of Korea, pop music out of Korea, become much bigger in the US. Artists like BTS have had multiple #1 albums. Super M have also had a #1 album. So K-pop is big. It's not mainstream, but it's very well known, and we're always looking for the next new thing. And what we've really noticed is the rise in music and listening to music from Africa. So we asked in our most recent survey, we asked about Afropop. And we said, how many people have listened to Afropop in the last 2 weeks? And it was 11% of music listeners, which is, a big chunk of people. And so I think in terms of where to look, Afropop is an interesting area, artists coming out of that continent. Other things that we kind of predict for 2021, a continued growth in audio streaming. We are not peak streaming. We think possibly in the US, we may reach 1 trillion audio streams by the end of this year. We were about 800 billion last year.
Wow.
So, a continued growth in audio streaming as it becomes, the main way, it already is, but, the main way that people are across all age groups are consuming music. I think, and along with that, country music on streaming is going to continue to rise. I think there is, it's a huge genre for the US, and it will continue to be very popular. And then following on from last year's trend in the visual space, I think we'll see continued evolution there and continued adoption. And when I say visual media, I'm meaning short form video, things like TikTok, becoming ever more popular. 58% of US consumers stream some sort of short form video in a given period. So, it's already very popular, but I think that will continue to rise. And as will the interest in live streaming and the continued evolution of live streaming to meet the needs and desires of different audiences. And, we may have got used to to a degree, the way that we live now. But I think people are still searching, always looking to kind of have some sort of new experience wherever they can. So I think the music industry's drive to meet that need is something we're going to see in 2021.
And what about the gaming industry? Because music has also gone into gaming. Is it possibility to see streamed there? And also what I'm seeing with virtual concerts are that they're trying to make it more gamification around it, to make it even more amazing and cool. And as you say, that people looking for the new now, how can you bring that concert experience into the virtual world than VR?
Oh, wow. So many things in that question. VR, gaming, gamification. I mean, I think, yes, absolutely. Music is a big part of gaming. I know there are also certain licensing issues that will be resolved around music. Also, when it comes to live stream performances, there are a lot of artists that have performed within gaming platforms, J Balvin in Fortnite, Travis Scott, I think also in Fortnite, kind of music festivals in Roblox. There's lots of that happening as well, because gaming is massively successful and popular amongst younger generations. And, the pandemic has done nothing but drive the importance of that. So I think we will continue to see evolution there and continue to see the importance of music in that place, as, sort of that virtual space. When it comes to VR, I personally, and I am not necessarily an expert, I'm certainly not an expert in the VR space. I have not seen a lot of VR events or kind of anything really that's happening in that space. I think the pandemic has not suddenly made us all adopt VR headsets as a way of embracing music.
That could be interesting to see if there's something coming up. I've heard some small birds here and there saying that it might be something popping up, and it could bring the bring the value of a music, because then the fans can get closer to the artists. And I think that is something that people are looking into, is how do I get closer to the artist? What can they do that become more personalized? And yeah, it's
yeah, I mean, there's certainly potential there, but I think it all depends on the consumer and whether they're willing to embrace that. And yeah, it's certainly a space to watch. I would agree.
And what kind of music do you like? And what is it about the industry that you're working that you love?
I hate that question. What kind of music do you like? I love all music. You know, one of the roles that we have at MRC is to be completely objective. Oh. And just, you know, report the facts. But in all honesty, I've been fascinated by K-pop. I travel.
What is K-pop? I didn't ask you that. Maybe
K-pop. But I mean, it's purely pop music out of Korea, by Korean artists.
Oh, now I get you.
Korean, you know, BTS, Blackpink, NCT 127, EXO, Red Velvet.
I feel too old for that right now, but yes.
And you know, before COVID, I would travel a lot, and you know, my trips to Korea, I found the country and the culture fascinating, and the way that they that the culture, be it beauty or food or films or, you know, television or music, is exported outside of Korea. Very yeah, just fascinating, to be honest. So I do love K-pop. And what was your other question? Oh yes. Why music? I think what's fascinating is, I mean, obviously I love music itself, but I also really enjoy the understanding the impact that it has on, you know, society, on culture, the importance of it and of music fandom to people's lives, and, you know, just understanding people through music. I really enjoy that.
And do you remember the experience we both had when we were in London? And
yeah,
we went to your offices in the consumer neuroscience, that you got the opportunity to test and put the EEG on your head.
Absolutely, yeah. So when we were part of Nielsen, and Nielsen at that time had a neuroscience division, and there was a lab, and Jasmine and I went, and they, you know, stuck things to my head to monitor my brainwaves, and then made me watch some advertising. It was fascinating. Yeah, because, you know, there is that subconscious reaction that we all have to stimulus, be it advertising or be it music, and music is so powerful in that way.
That's what I love about what I do, is like, music is something that is just around us. It's like a magic around us. How do you bottle it up? And that's what I liked about when we went to the lab. At least we got an opportunity of like, okay, let her listen, let her watch us. What does pop up in your head?
It's really weird to be monitored in that way, because obviously it's you can't control it. It just happens.
Yeah. Yeah, but then, like, I'm so inspired and impressed, because you've been in the industry now for like 18 years plus. How did you then end up in this? Because it couldn't just have been randomly, right?
Well, I think we all, you know, there's an element of luck to everyone's career and trajectory. I did, you know, as you said in your introduction, I did a music degree. Because I loved it, and I played the piano as a child, and I but not with an idea of ending up here for sure. And then I got my first job at the PRS for music in London. Just, an entry level job, but an introduction and an excellent introduction to the music industry. And I think just that constant curiosity about this space, and then, working, I worked in the international division of the PRS for a couple of years, and then, kind of exploring the world of music outside of my home country. And I spent a couple of years living in the US, which is obviously the biggest music market in the world. And just that constant desire to try and understand what's happening around the world more has kind of led me to this, this great job of tracking what's happening in all these different countries, and what people are doing and what they're listening to and what's important.
Well, you are involved in a lot of different kind of organizations, and one of them is actually, well, through your work, you invited me to the Women in Music Leadership Global Summit branch in Cannes during Midem in 2019, when everything was normal. Tell us about this organization and the importance of women in the music industry.
So Women in Music is an organization with offices or chapters in multiple countries around the world, from the US, Canada, India, South Africa, the UK. And the role is to promote equality, diversity, and support women in the music space, be they artists, be they in the music business side of things, to support, to provide education. And I think, it's a vital resource. It's very important to me that the industry we work in reflects the music fans that there are. Not everyone loves music. Some people actually don't, but a lot of people enjoy music, consume music, are touched by it in some way, and men as well as women. And I think the industry we work in has to reflect the fans and the consumers of the music that is being created.
And then they're helping that out.
Yes, helping with education, with support, with providing those networks so that women and men who support women, absolutely, can meet each other, can learn from each other, can grow, all of those good things.
Yeah, I mean, based on my own experience and because of the fun of the industry, it's enormous popularity to wanting to work in the music industry, and even like get the foot in is not easy. What kind of advice do you have for people that want to have a successful career in the business side of the music?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it can be quite a challenge. I think I'm going to give some advice that I didn't do, but in hindsight, that was the best advice. I suggest that people do. So I think that one of the key things about the industry, and I've never worked in any other industry, so it may also be in other places, but music industry is actually very small, and it's very much driven by networks and who people know people, and it's very important to grow your network and meet as many people, and to constantly keep doing that, not just at the beginning of your career, but constantly keep evolving and networking. I think that's very important. The other thing that I would really advise is to learn as much as possible on the job as you can early in your career. And I think a good way of doing that is by trying to work in lots of different areas of the music business. So work for a record label and work for a publisher and work for a performing rights organization, or work at a studio, or work, you know, all these different areas in those early years of your career, so you can really build your network and get a grounding, because it's quite a complex industry. There's lots of different areas, lots of different moving parts, and to learn about it from being in it, I think, is hugely powerful. So I did not do that in the early stages of my career, in the sense that I didn't go and work for all these different types of companies, but I did move around, move jobs, move teams, move departments quite a lot in my early career, to kind of really get an understanding of what everyone did and how it all fitted together.
Yeah, it's nice. Everybody's journey is different, but it's always great to be able to get some advice how you can get in. I mean, people ask me the same question, and I say very much like, just be consistent, show what you love, and just go for it, and knock doors. That's probably what I've done my way. Now, with like trying to end this, I want to know, going back a little bit back to what I mentioned before. I mean, this report has been very interesting because it's very important to understand the consumer's music consumption and behavior. And I also talk a lot about bringing them up for brands to understand, because these consumers are brands' clients. And it's therefore very important for brands to understand, where should I exist? Where are people? What can I do, kind of creative branding, audio branding, to reach out to these people? Based on your report, of all your reports and everything have passed in 2020 and the forecast going forward, what practices do you think you could give to brands to think about to fit into this world?
From a sponsorship perspective, or from
any perspective? Engagement.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Obviously, music consumers are brands consumers. I think music allows brands to access a consumer that can be hard to reach in other ways. I think that there is a lot happening in the music space, especially as we've discussed with live streaming, that brands should really pay attention to. You know, aligning themselves with the right artist or the right cause can really influence the way that consumers feel about that brand. It can be really powerful. And, you know, there are lots of brands that work with music or with artists, and have aligned themselves over the years and quite strongly with the music space. And yeah, they certainly see brand lift, or the kind of perception of the brand increase, because of that very smart alignment. And we can, you know, we work with brands, and we help both helping brands make sure that they're partnering with the right sort of artist that's going to give the right sort of perception of their brand, and then measuring the impact of that brand alignment. So yes,
very
interesting. Do not overlook music brands out there. It is a very diverse space. There will be an artist or a genre or an event or something that absolutely meets your criteria in terms of who you want to reach.
And today brands don't have to think about, like, I have to be that multiple million brand to do this. With all these amazing short videos and new up and coming artists, things happening, even like startups or other companies can actually get involved, and it helps with reaching their target group emotionally. That's the power of music that it has.
Yes. Yep, 100%. Jasmine, you are right there. There's lots of opportunity, different shapes and sizes. And yeah, music provides that emotional connection.
I can't wait to see everything coming up. Thank you very much, Helena.
Thank
This has
you,
been
Jasmine.
so lovely. And if people want to know more about your report, where can they go and read it?
So the year-end report in conjunction with Billboard is available to download from the Billboard website, billboard.com, and it's free. And otherwise, you can find me in all the usual places on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk to anyone. So just get in touch.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for today's episode of The Power of Audio, Science and AI. I'm Jasmine Moradi, your host, and thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and support by sharing this content on your social media. This episode is supported by Stockholm Music City.